I used to think the stories coming out of the Appalachian Mountains were exaggerated. You hear things growing up in America. Old mining towns where nobody stops after dark. Villages tucked deep into the hills where people still lock their doors before sunset. Not because of crime, but because of what walks the tree line. Most folks laugh it off. I did too, until I spent 3 weeks in a place called Blackwater Hollow. Now, before I go any further, I need to say something. I'm not telling you this because I want attention. Hell, I stayed quiet about it for almost 4 years. But lately, I haven't been sleeping much. And every single night, around 2:13 a.m., I keep hearing the same sound outside my apartment window. 3 knocks. Slow. Patient. Like something traveled a very long way to find me again. And if you're listening to this alone tonight, you might want to keep the lights on, because this story starts in one of those tiny Appalachian villages that doesn't appear on most maps anymore. The kind of place where people stare at you too long when you mention the wrong name. The kind of place where the woods feel alive. And the kind of place where, according to the locals, you never whistle after midnight. I learned that lesson the hard way. It started in late October of 2021. I was working freelance photography back then, driving through eastern Kentucky, documenting abandoned coal towns for a regional magazine. Most of the places I visited were exactly what you'd expect. Collapsed porches, rusted pickup trucks, churches with 10 people left attending Sunday service. Sad places, quiet places. But Blackwater Hollow was different from the moment I arrived. The road into town twisted through miles of dense forest. No gas stations, no stores, no cell signal. Just endless trees pressing close against the road like they were trying to swallow it whole. About 10 miles out, I noticed something strange. Every single mailbox along the road had a strip of red cloth tied around it. Not 1 or 2, all of them. At first, I figured maybe it was for hunting season or some local tradition. But then I realized something else. None of the houses had porch lights on, and it was already getting dark. Now, listen. I've driven through plenty of rural towns before. But when an entire village decides darkness is somehow safer than light, that'll make the hair stand up on your neck real quick. I reached Blackwater Hollow around 6:40 p.m. Tiny place, maybe 30 homes total. There was a diner, a post office, and a weather-beaten church sitting crooked on a hill overlooking the village. Most buildings looked untouched since the 70s. I parked outside the diner, hoping to grab coffee and ask around about old mining sites nearby. The second I walked in, the conversation stopped. You ever experienced that? That sudden silence when everyone notices you at once? Yeah, that. About 8 people sat inside the diner, all locals, all staring at me like I'd just wandered into somebody's funeral wearing clown shoes. Finally, an older waitress approached me. Gray hair, deep wrinkles, cigarette voice. She looked exhausted. "You passed the red markers on the road?" she asked. I nodded, and I swear to God, her face tightened. "You should have turned around." Now at this point, I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it sounded ridiculous. Like some low-budget horror movie setup. And honestly, I should have listened to my instincts right then. But curiosity is a dangerous thing, especially in Appalachia. I told her I was staying a few nights to photograph abandoned mining structures. She leaned closer. "Then stay out of the woods after dark." Simple enough warning, right? Except the way she said it. It didn't sound like advice. It sounded like fear. A younger guy sitting near the window finally spoke up. Probably mid-30s. Beard. Carhartt jacket. "You hear whistling at night," he said. "Don't answer it." A couple locals immediately glared at him like he'd said something forbidden. The waitress snapped at him to shut up, and that's when I noticed something else. Every single window in that diner had heavy black curtains nailed over them. Not closed. Nailed. I asked why. Nobody answered. Instead, the waitress handed me my coffee and quietly said, "People disappear up here." Now look, I'm not proud of this next part, but instead of leaving town like a sane person, I got more interested. Because photographers are idiots. Seriously, you can tell us there's an ancient demon living in the woods, and our first response is usually, "Cool. Is there good lighting?" So, I checked into a small rental cabin about a mile outside town. The owner left the key under a flower pot with a handwritten note. "Lock doors before dark. Do not open windows. Ignore any knocking." At that point, even I started feeling uneasy. Still, I convinced myself it was local superstition. Maybe they liked messing with outsiders. That explanation worked. For about 3 hours. Around 11 p.m., I was reviewing photos when I heard the first whistle. Faint. Far away. It echoed through the trees behind the cabin. Long and low. Not musical, not human. I froze. Then it came again. Closer this time. Now, here's the thing. Nobody tells you about deep Appalachian woods at night. They are never fully silent. You hear insects, wind, branches moving. But after that whistle, everything stopped. No crickets, no wind, nothing. Just dead silence. And somehow, that silence felt worse than the sound itself. I locked the cabin door and tried ignoring it. A few minutes later, something walked across the porch. Slow footsteps. Heavy, wood creaking under weight. I remember holding my breath so hard my chest hurt. Then came 3 knocks against the front door. Knock, knock, knock. Not aggressive. Almost polite. Like whoever, or whatever, stood outside already knew I was in there. I stayed completely still. Another whistle drifted through the trees. Except this one came from farther away. Meaning whatever knocked wasn't making the whistling sound. That realization hit me like ice water. Because now, there were at least 2 things outside. And then, I heard my own voice. "Hey man," it whispered from the porch. "Open up." Every muscle in my body locked. Same tone, same cadence. Exactly my voice. I know how insane that sounds. Believe me. But hearing yourself speak from outside a locked cabin in the middle of nowhere, that does something to your brain. The voice spoke again. "You forgot your camera." I looked over. My camera was sitting right beside me on the table. That's when survival instinct finally kicked in. I turned off every light in the cabin and backed into the corner, holding the fireplace poker like that rusty thing was Excalibur itself. The knocking stopped after about 10 minutes, but I didn't sleep, not even close. Around sunrise, I drove straight back into town. The diner waitress took one look at me and knew. "You heard it," she said quietly. I asked her what was in those woods. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she poured coffee with shaking hands. Then she told me a story the locals apparently grew up hearing. Back in the mining days, entire groups of workers vanished deep in the mountains. Search parties found camps abandoned, tools scattered everywhere, but no bodies, Then people started hearing voices in the woods. Familiar voices. Family members. Friends. Sometimes dead relatives. The stories spread across neighboring villages for generations. According to locals, something in those mountains learns people, mimics them, calls them into the dark. Now, if you're sitting there thinking these are just old Appalachian legends, that's exactly what I thought too, until the waitress asked me a question I still can't answer. How did know your voice after one night? That shut me up real fast, because she was right. I hadn't spoken much since arriving. So how did it mimic me perfectly? I decided I was leaving that afternoon. Didn't care about photos anymore. Didn't care about money. I just wanted out. But before I left, the younger guy from the diner approached me outside. He looked nervous, sleep-deprived, like someone carrying around secrets too heavy for one person. He told me people in Blackwater Hollow had rules. Never whistle at night. Never follow voices into the trees. Never look directly into the woods if you hear knocking behind you. And most importantly, if someone calls your name from outside after midnight, do not answer immediately. Wait, because sometimes they'll call twice. I asked him what that meant. He just stared toward the mountains. You answer the wrong voice, he whispered. It learns you better. Then he walked away. I left town an hour later, or at least I tried to. About 5 miles outside Blackwater Hollow, my truck stalled. No warning. Engine just died. Dead battery. No signal. Middle of nowhere. Perfect. I sat there cursing under my breath while the sun disappeared behind the mountains. And then I noticed something standing between the trees. Tall. Unnaturally tall. Too thin. At first I thought it was a tree trunk, until it moved. Slowly. One step forward, then another. I locked the truck doors immediately. The figure stopped at the edge of the woods, maybe 40 yards away. And even from that distance, I could tell it wasn't right. Its arms hung too long. Its posture bent awkwardly, like it wasn't used to standing upright. Then it tilted its head, and I heard my mother's voice. Jack. Soft. Gentle. Exactly like her. My blood turned cold, because my mother was over 7,000 miles away at the time. The thing took another step forward, then smiled. I couldn't fully see the face through the trees, but I saw enough. The mouth stretched too wide, way too wide. Then came the whistle, right beside the truck. I turned sharply toward the passenger window, and something tapped the glass. 3 slow taps. I swear I nearly blacked out. There was nothing there when I looked, but the figure by the trees was suddenly closer, much closer. I grabbed the tire iron from under my seat, even though deep down I knew it wouldn't matter. Then headlights appeared behind me. A pickup truck. The younger guy from the diner pulled alongside my vehicle. He rolled down the window and shouted, "Don't look back at it." I didn't argue, didn't ask questions. He hooked chains to my truck and towed me nearly 15 miles without speaking once. When we finally reached the highway, he stopped. Before leaving, he looked me dead in the eyes and said something I think about almost every night now. It followed you because you listened. Then he drove away. I never saw Blackwater Hollow again. But here's the part that keeps me awake. 3 months after that trip, I started hearing whistling outside my apartment at night. At first, only occasionally, then more often, always around 2:13 a.m. And last winter, I heard knocking on my bedroom window, 3 slow knocks, followed by my own voice whispering from outside, "Hey man, open up." Now maybe there's a logical explanation for all this. Maybe isolation messes with the mind. Maybe Appalachian folklore gets under your skin. Or maybe some places in those mountains hold things older than the towns built around them. Things that learned long ago how to call people into the dark. And maybe the people living in those tiny forgotten villages aren't paranoid at all. Maybe they're surviving. So if you ever find yourself driving through Appalachia late at night, and you pass a village where every porch light is off, keep driving. And if you hear whistling in the woods, whatever you do, don't answer it, because sometimes it answers back. And before you go tonight, I want to ask you something. If you were trapped in Blackwater Hollow and you heard someone you loved calling your name from those woods, would you answer? Let me know down in the comments. And if you've ever heard strange stories coming out of Appalachia, small mountain towns, or places people avoid after dark, I'd love to read them, because the deeper I dig into these stories, the more I start thinking some legends exist for a reason.